Happy Friday, friends. I was going to get noisemakers and a fun hat, but I refrained. So we have made it through the first week on this Friday, March 27th. It's actually my nephew Bradley's 13th birthday, but you didn't need to know that. So I just want to finish up 3.5 today and a couple of housekeeping things. Please make sure you get logged on to WebAssign. If you are having issues, please reach out to me because I've been able to fix several of those. So please reach out and we can get you hooked up. Our first assignment on WebAssign will be next week, and that will also be how we take our first test. So please make sure that you are getting logged on with the code that is listed in the announcements. So okay, let's finish up 3.5. So remember with 3.5, several pieces. So finding the domain, and then vertical and horizontal asymptotes, x and y intercepts, determining symmetry, and then additional points. So picking some x values in between our asymptotes, and then solving for f of x or y. So we're going to do 3 graphs today. Remember, I am not concerned about graphing this. I am concerned about, can you find the pieces? Can you find the pieces? How do you find those? So, okay, we'll start with the first one. So usually when I do these, I start with, first of all, trying to factor it. So if you'll notice right here at the top, the top can't be factored because it's positive in the middle. It creates non-real zeros if you try to solve it. And then the bottom, it will factor into x plus 2, x minus 1. So to find the domain, remember you set the bottom equal to 0 and solve. So x cannot be negative 2 and 1, which directly leads us to our vertical asymptotes. So that means that our vertical asymptotes are negative 2 and 1. So you can see those vertical lines on our graph right here that I put those in. The tick marks on the graph, every 2 is counting as 1 to make it a little bigger for you. So you can see our vertical asymptotes. Remember, our graph will not cross or touch those. Horizontal asymptotes are done by comparing the top and the bottom exponents. So my x squared over x squared, so the exponent is the same, so I take the leading coefficients. So that means that it's 1 over 1, so y equals 1. So I have my horizontal asymptote through here. Your graph can cross it, and we'll see that it does over here as we go through. X and y intercepts, so your x intercepts, you want to set the top equal to 0 and solve. When you solve this, you do get imaginary numbers, so that means it's not real. And remember, your x-intercepts have to be within the domain, and the domain means you have to have real numbers, and then it cannot be undefined. So there's no x-intercept here because there's no real zeros. For my y-intercept, I plug 0, I do f of 0, so 0 everywhere there's an x, I get out negative 1/2. So my y-intercept is 0, 1/2, and you can see it graphed right here. Symmetry, so this is where you're putting in negative x. You're looking to see if it comes out exactly the same as you started, exactly different that you started, or if it's just a combination of the two. So if you'll notice, everything went back exactly the same except this negative x. So that means because of that, there is no symmetry, so that can't help us out with the graph. And then I just chose some x points. So how I chose them, you want to choose them basically because of our vertical asymptotes, it's set up into 3 separate sections of the graph. So that's how I chose. I chose negative 5, negative 3, because I wanted to see what was happening on the left. Between the 2 vertical asymptotes, I chose the negative 1. And then to the right of the vertical asymptote, I chose 2, 3, and 4. So you can kind of see how that works. So this is our graph once we put it all on. Now this graph, pretty much because the asymptotes, is cut into 6th. So what you'll notice is the graph happened up top here, but nothing will ever happen below that. So the graph happened down here, nothing will ever happen up here. It happened up top, nothing's going to happen down here. So that's how these graphs set up. Okay, if we go to the next one. So the bottom can't factor, so that tells me my domain is, I don't have a domain. Okay. Because of that, I also don't have any vertical asymptotes because that means there's no real numbers if it can't factor. Horizontal asymptotes are done by comparing, again, your highest degree terms. They're both the same, so you're taking the leading coefficient there. So y equals 2, so you can see that in the orange highlighter. Your x-intercepts, okay, take the top and factor it. So you could take out a 2, x squared minus 9, and then factor that again. Set it all equal to 0 and solve. So I have 2 x-intercepts at negative 3, 0, and 3, 0. And then my y-intercept, I plug in 0 for f, and I get out negative 6. So I have a y-intercept of 0, negative 6. So then you kind of notice as you put some things on the graph, wow, I'm kind of getting some symmetry. So when I look for symmetry, I find out, wow, when I put in negative x, I get out exactly the same. So that means that the graph is going to be symmetric around the y-axis. So what happens on one side of the y-axis is going to mirror itself on the other side. So if you'll notice, my negative 3, 0, and 3, 0. So that also helps us with our additional points because I picked 1, 2, and 6. So with 1, I got negative 4 out when I substituted in. So that means I also get negative 1, negative 4 because it's symmetric around the y-axis. And then 2 and 6. So then when you graph those points, you can kind of see what happens. So, and because this happened, there's no vertical asymptotes. So this happened on the bottom of the horizontal asymptote, so nothing will happen on the top. And again, I just need you to know how to find the parts. And I'm going to sneeze. So one moment, you're used to this. You should feel right at home. Okay? My multiple sneezes for the day. Okay, so the last one. Okay, I put this in there just so we can kind of see what happens. So again, I started by factoring the top and the bottom, and if you notice, you have a common factor. So x minus 4 is common in the top and the bottom, and so because of that, that's going to create a hole in the graph. Okay, a hole in the graph at 4, and so when x is equal to 4, so we'll kind of see that in the graph. So when you're finding your domain and you're finding your vertical asymptote and you're finding your x-intercept, that common factor you do not use. So our domain, we're just using the x minus 2 to find that x cannot be 2. For my vertical asymptote, so that means x is equal to 2. So that's my vertical asymptote going on. My horizontal asymptote, again, I'm comparing top and bottom exponents, so y equals 1, because we're taking the leading coefficients because they're the same. My x-intercept, again, this is where we set the top equal to 0. We don't use the common factor. We just use the x plus 4. So we get the 1 y x-intercept at negative 1, 0. My y-intercept, I plug f of 0 in, and I get negative 1/2. So 0, negative 1/2. Okay, and then symmetry, when you plug in negative x, you'll notice that these two in the middle change signs, and it's not exactly the same and it's not exactly different. So no symmetry is going to help us there. And then picking some additional points on either side of the vertical asymptote. So we can kind of see what this looks like, right? And again, it's cut into fourths. The graph is happening down here below, so that means nothing's happening up top. Things are happening up top here, so that means nothing's happening below. So this one is kind of diagonal from each other. Okay, there is some homework you can look at. Again, I'm not taking up homework in any way, but it just kind of gives you some additional practice to find the pieces. And again, I'm not going to ask you to graph, but just being able to find the pieces as it goes. So, okay, so again, we finished our first week. We are going online for the rest of the semester. After our first week, again, I miss you guys. Miss your faces. This is super hard for someone, an extrovert, who myself is an extrovert. Not being able to see your work and not being able to answer your questions face to face. So know that this is a struggle for me. I'm learning quite well. but it is a struggle. Please know that because I can't see you, I'm that person who wants to know you're okay. If you have concerns, please reach out. A couple of you I've already been able to Zoom with, and so I've got to see you one-on-one, and so that has worked well. So again, if you have any questions, please reach out, and we can definitely Zoom and do that face-to-face. So please get enrolled in WebAssign, because when we finish up the chapter on Monday with 2.6, kind of our schedule for next week. We'll finish up the chapter on Monday with 2.6, and I will also give you on Monday, you will have a quiz on WebAssign. You will have a review to finish by Wednesday, and then on Friday, we will take our first test in WebAssign. Okay, so I need you to make sure to do your quiz in it so you get comfortable with it. So no, it's a work in progress. I'm learning WebAssign. I'm also having to learn another homework platform for 2 other classes, but I'm in this for you guys. So please make sure that you are staying up with announcements, staying up with emails, staying up with videos. Do not get behind. This is the point where you have to take responsibility for your own education. So this is not ideal. Know that I know that, but hopefully hopefully this is working for you. So. Okay, have a great weekend. We will pick back up on Monday, and we will go from there. So, okay, see you guys. And I lost my record button, so I'm not exactly sure I'm going to get this back. There it goes.